You were not born like this, quiet, careful, afraid of being too much. You weren't born afraid to speak, to want, to say no. You learned it, somewhere between being a child who laughed freely and becoming an adult who scans every room for safety. Something happened, something cracked, and no one noticed. Because you kept smiling, you became excellent at hiding the ache. You learned how to shrink without being asked. You softened your voice, apologized too much, said it's okay when it wasn't. Not because you're weak, but because, back then, it was your only way to survive. There was a moment, maybe 100 moments, where your emotions were too big for someone else to handle. So you carried them alone. And from that silence, your personality formed. They say you're so calm. They don't know it's because conflict terrifies you. They say, you're so kind. They don't know it's because love used to be a transaction. They say, you're so strong. They don't know you never had a choice. That's what Carl Jung meant. When an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. The wound you never looked at became who you think you are. But what if it's not? What if you're not broken, just buried? And the version of you they praise isn't the real you, but the one that made it out alive? This isn't about blaming anyone. It's about understanding something powerful. You didn't become like this for no reason, and you don't have to stay like this to be safe. Today, we walk through that, not with steps, but with truths. Stay with me, because this isn't a story. It's a remembering, and maybe a homecoming. If something already stirred inside you, don't ignore it. Subscribe, share, or comment below. This space was made for people like you. Now breathe. We begin. They told you time would heal it, that if you just kept going, kept living, it would fade. But that's the thing about wounds that shape your identity. They don't fade. They fuse. They weld themselves into your smile, your choices, your silence. You don't even notice when it happens. That's how deep it goes. You think, this is just how I am. But it's not. It's how you had to be. To belong. To be loved. To stay safe. You were so young when you learned that being yourself came with consequences. So you adapted. And no one saw the cost. Sign 1. You became hyper. Aware. You walk into a room and you scan for tone, for tension, for emotional weather. Before anyone speaks, you already feel it. Before anyone frowns, you're already shrinking. It's not a superpower. It's self-protection. When people say, you're so intuitive, you nod. But deep down, you know it's not intuition, it's experience. You've read the storm before, you've lived inside it. You had to. Because back then, not noticing a shift in someone's mood meant you might get hurt, or yelled at, or frozen out, or blamed for something that wasn't yours to carry. You tuned yourself into other people's emotions so well, you lost your own. You became a mirror instead of a person. And now, you don't know what you want. You only know how to anticipate what others expect. You shapeshift so well they call you easygoing, but inside, you're tired. Sign 2. You apologize for existing, not in words, but in the way you move. In how you ask questions with disclaimers. I'm sorry, but I don't want to be a burden, but you offer your needs like they're debts someone has to forgive, because once, needing something made you a problem. So now, you starve in silence and call it independence. But the truth? You're not independent. You're exhausted. And you don't even realize how often you betray yourself just to keep the peace. You say yes when your body says no. You smile when your heart screams. You listen when no one ever listens to you. And when someone finally shows you softness, it terrifies you. Because kindness feels foreign and safety feels suspicious. You start waiting for the catch. Because love, to you, was always conditional. Do this, be that. Don't feel too much. Don't speak too loud. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be enough. But you never were. Because the people who made you feel small needed you to stay small. It kept them comfortable. You see, that's what no one tells you. The version of you that's quiet and kind and low maintenance, it was born from fear, not peace. But the people who benefit from your silence will always praise your gentleness. They'll say, you're so strong, and they'll never ask why you had to be. There's a part of you that's always bracing, even in calm moments, especially in calm moments, because calm never lasted, did it? When it got quiet in the house, you didn't relax. You listened harder. When someone was nice for too long, you didn't trust it. You waited for the change. Because growing up, love came with conditions. It was earned, not given. Safety wasn't a baseline, it was a mood swing. So now, even as an adult, your nervous system is still wired for threat, not because you're dramatic, but because you're trained. Sign 3. You stay loyal to pain that feels familiar. You call it chemistry, that magnetic pull toward people who drain you. But it's not chemistry, it's history. It's your body recognizing a dynamic it knows how to survive. That's why chaos feels like home. That's why stillness feels suspicious. That's why when someone loves you softly, you question it. You wonder, what do they want? Because you learned early on that love was a transaction, not a sanctuary. So you chase people who don't see you. You beg quietly with your actions. Choose me, pick me, stay. And when they don't, you don't get angry. You get smaller. Because you don't know what it feels like to be the one who walks away. You only know how to cling to what hurts just to feel something familiar. And still, you keep showing up. For everyone. Even the ones who wouldn't cross a puddle for you. Sign 4. You confuse overgiving with love. You carry people's pain like it's your purpose. You listen for hours. You give second chances like candy. You say, I understand, when you're really crumbling. You're the one they all call when life breaks. But when you need someone, your phone stays silent, not because you're hard to love, but because you trained them to expect your silence. You trained them that you'd always be there no matter how little they give in return. You made yourself easy to forget. And the worst part? When someone finally chooses you, you don't believe them. You question their motives. You look for the flaw. You push them away slowly, with doubt and distance, because you don't trust that anyone would stay if they really saw your wounds. But here's what you don't see. The parts you hide are the most beautiful. The softness, the ache, the truth. You think you're hard to love, but maybe you've just never been loved in a language your wounds could understand. Sign 5. You call numbness peace. You've lived so long in survival mode that when it finally quiets down, when there's no one to fight, no one to please, no fire to put out, you mistake the emptiness for healing. But peace isn't silent suffering. Peace isn't dissociation dressed as calm. Peace isn't feeling nothing and calling it strength. It's being fully present in your own skin and still feeling safe there. But how could you know that? When your worth was tied to usefulness, rest feels like guilt. When your identity was shaped by endurance, softness feels like failure. You learned to call exhaustion a virtue, and every time your body begged you to slow down, you answered with more doing, more fixing, more giving, more hiding, because if you stopped, even for a second, you might feel, and that's the one thing you weren't allowed to do, wasn't it? Feel angry, feel sad, feel hurt. No one ever gave you permission to fall apart, so you learned to store it all. Every heartbreak, every silence, every unmet need. And now, you're overflowing. You cry at random things. Or worse, you don't cry at all. You feel like a stranger in your own body. Like something sacred got locked away so long ago, you're not sure how to find it again. But it's there, buried beneath the masks, behind the I'm fines. Under the armor you crafted so beautifully, it became your skin. And if you're still listening right now, that means something inside you is ready. Ready to come home, not to the person you became to survive, but to the person you were before. Before the fear, before the freeze, before you mistook coping for character, because your wound did become your personality. But that's not the end of the story. That's just where you paused it. You see, healing doesn't ask you to erase who you were. It asks you to understand her, to honor him, to say, you made it. Thank you for getting me this far, but I don't have to hide behind you anymore. It's not about changing overnight. It's about meeting the parts you abandoned with compassion, not correction. It's about remembering that you were never too much and never not enough. You were just hurting, and healing is just loving the parts of you that learn to hurt quietly. Some days, healing feels like rage, not the kind that burns everything down, but the quiet kind that whispers, I deserved better. You remember things differently now, not with excuses, not with, they did their best, but with clarity, with honesty, with pain that finally has permission to exist. You stop defending the ones who hurt you. You stop making yourself the villain in every memory. You stop shrinking your truth just to keep someone else comfortable. This is where it begins, not with forgiveness, not with letting go, but with naming it. They weren't emotionally unavailable, they were careless with your heart. They weren't just bad at love, they drained you and called it passion. It wasn't your fault they couldn't meet you, it was never your job to beg for love in a language they refused to learn. And yet, you carry their echoes in how you love today. You flinch when someone raises their voice, even in joy. You panic when a text goes unanswered. You say I love you like it's a warning, not a gift. Because your nervous system doesn't speak logic. It speaks memory. And every new person has to answer for ghosts they never met. But here's the shift. You're starting to notice it. That's the first sign you're healing. Not that you never hurt, but that you no longer betray yourself to avoid it. You pause. You breathe. You name what's happening inside, instead of judging it. And slowly, the masks start to slip. You say no without apologizing. You rest without guilt. You cry without hiding. You stop performing wholeness and start practicing it. And it's messy, and it's slow, and it's so holy. Because for the first time, you're not abandoning yourself just to keep someone else close. You're learning that the safest place to be is with you. Not the curated version, not the polite silence, but the real you, raw, tender, unfolding, the version who feels deeply, who needs rest, who says this hurts and doesn't feel ashamed. You are not too broken, you're just finally being honest, and honesty, the kind that trembles, that shakes, that wants to run, is still sacred. Even now, I know you're holding your breath, wondering if this version of you is lovable, worthy, enough. Let me say it softly. Yes, even now, especially now, there is a quiet grief that comes with healing. No one warns you about that. It's not just about moving forward. It's about looking back and realizing how long you've lived disconnected from yourself. You start to mourn the years, the friendships where you were never seen, the relationships where you gave everything just to feel half held, the moments when you laughed, but your heart wasn't in the room. And it breaks you not in a hopeless way, but in a human one, because you start to see it clearly. You were never the problem. You were the child who needed gentleness and got coldness. You were the teen who needed guidance and got silence. You were the adult who needed partnership and got performance. You were the one who kept loving, even in the absence of love. And now, you're learning how to love without abandoning yourself in the process. You set boundaries, and it feels like betrayal, because for so long, love meant self-sacrifice. Now you say, this doesn't feel right, and your hands shake. You tell someone no, and spend hours wondering if you were cruel. But that's the residue, not reality. The truth, kindness without boundaries isn't love. It's martyrdom. Compassion without self-awareness isn't virtue. It's avoidance. And you're done avoiding. You're starting to make eye contact with your own pain, not to dwell, not to drown, but to dignify it. Because ignoring it never made it disappear. It just made it louder in the background. And you deserve peace that doesn't come from pretending. So you sit with the ache. You write the words. You let yourself cry at movies or commercials or nothing at all. You stop needing a reason to feel, because that's the gift no one tells you about healing. You get to reclaim softness. The softness they called weakness. The softness you locked away to protect your heart. The softness that is still there, underneath all the armor. You were never cold. You were cautious. You were never emotionless. You were guarding a flood. And now, you're letting it in, not all at once. Not recklessly, but tenderly. Like sunlight through curtains. Like a memory that doesn't hurt anymore. Like the first deep breath after years of holding it. You begin to see the difference between who you are and who you had to be. And it stuns you, because for so long, you believed the mask was your face, the calm voice, the perfect timing, the unshakable helper. But now, there are moments, quiet, almost invisible moments, when something different slips through. You speak without filtering. You rest without guilt. You want something, and you let yourself want it. That's not regression, that's rebirth. And no, it doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like rebellion, because the people around you, they were comfortable with your pain as long as you wore it politely. They praised your strength but never asked about its cost. They loved the version of you that didn't need anything from them. So when you start needing, when you start saying that hurt or I can't do this anymore, they may flinch. Some may leave. Some may lash out. Some may accuse you of changing. But what they really mean is, You're no longer easy to use. Let them go. Their love was not love. It was control wearing soft clothes. You're not here to be manageable. You're here to be whole. And wholeness, it's messy. It's loud. It's sometimes inconvenient, but it's real. And the ones meant for you, the friends, the lovers, the family you choose, they will not fear your truth. They will lean into it. They will honor it, because you're no longer asking to be rescued. You're asking to be met, not above you, not below you, but beside you. That's what you were always longing for, wasn't it? Not someone to save you, but someone to see you. Someone who doesn't flinch when your voice shakes. Someone who doesn't shame your triggers. Someone who says, you don't have to perform here. And until they come, you become that person for yourself. You sit with yourself in the dark and say, I'm not leaving. I see you. I won't shame what you had to do to survive. But I will help you learn how to live. You hold your own hand through the unlearning. You forgive yourself for not knowing better. And you remind yourself every single day. Healing is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. There will be days when you slip. When the old you, the one built on silence and people-pleasing, shows up again, you'll answer too quickly. You'll smile when you mean to cry. You'll say it's okay when it isn't. And in those moments, shame might whisper, you haven't healed at all. But listen to me. Relapsing into old patterns isn't failure. It's familiarity. It's your nervous system reaching for the only map it's ever known. And you, with your awareness, your breath, your presence, are learning to draw a new one. So when you notice yourself disappearing again, don't punish it. Notice, pause, return. That is the healing, not perfection. Practice. You are rewiring years of survival in real time. Be gentle. Talk to yourself the way you wish someone had when you were young and scared and hurting. Tell yourself, I see why you did that. You were trying to stay safe, but you don't have to do that anymore. Because healing isn't linear. It's circular. It spirals through you, bringing up what still aches, what still wants your love, what still hopes you'll come back. And every time you return to yourself, you become safer in your own body, in your own heart, in your own truth. And it shows. You no longer beg for crumbs, you walk away from empty tables. You no longer chase love, you choose peace. You no longer prove your worth, you rest in it. And the world starts to look different. Not because it changed, but because you did. You no longer need loud validation to feel real. You no longer need chaos to feel alive. You no longer confuse adrenaline with connection. You look in the mirror and say, this is me. And for the first time, it feels like a homecoming. You don't need to explain your softness. You don't need to apologize for your scars. You don't need to shrink your voice to be loved. Because you're no longer building a life around being accepted. You're building a life around being authentic. And that life, that quiet, rich, present life, is worth every unraveling that brought you here. Your wound was never the enemy. It was the doorway. It cracked you open so light could get in. So now, when someone asks you, who are you? You don't freeze. You don't search for a version of yourself they'll like. You don't scan their face for approval before you speak. You answer slowly, from the center of you. From the part that no longer needs to perform to feel safe, because you've stopped building your identity around who stayed, who left, or who couldn't love you. You've started building it around who you are, when no one's watching. And that version of you, she's not always polished, he's not always calm, they're not always agreeable, but they're honest, and alive, and free. And that freedom, it's not loud, it doesn't scream or dance on stages, it's subtle. It's how your shoulders drop in safe spaces. It's how you laugh without checking the room. It's how you say, I don't know, without shame. It's how you rest deeply, guiltlessly, knowing you don't have to earn rest anymore. You understand now. You were never meant to carry the entire weight of love on your back. You were never meant to be the fixer, the forgiver, the forever giver. You were meant to receive too, not just tolerate, not just survive, but thrive. To feel held not just by others, but by yourself. To feel safe not because danger left, but because you finally stayed. To feel joy not because you earned it, but because it's your birthright. You were not born to be a lesson for other people. You were not born to be a mirror for their projections. You were born to live. And not just any life, but a life that reflects the truth of who you are. Soft and powerful, quiet and wild, gentle and fierce, whole and becoming. And as this chapter ends, you realize You're not returning to the old you. You're not becoming a new you. You're finally meeting the real you, the one who's been waiting patiently behind the mask. And maybe, just maybe, that's the beginning of everything. Thank you for walking this path with me. If something inside you felt seen, felt held, or even felt cracked open, don't keep that feeling to yourself. Like, comment, share, subscribe, not for numbers, but so someone else, someone silently carrying the same wound, knows they're not alone. You weren't born broken. You were born whole, and you're finding your way back. I'm proud of you.